Hey there, sugarcane. So you have a noisy Lite 5-inch and you want somebody to take a look. So let's check it out. So pulling up your logs, first thing is you probably are getting caught up, and I might even told you this. For the debug mode you want to run Notch. It used to be Gyro. But as of 3.2.0, they moved the debug modes around a little bit based on some of the videos which I believe you've watched with that diagram of where the debug modes are and the unfiltered noise. So Notch is the totally unfiltered scaled noise now. So for future logs I would run Notch instead of Gyro. So the Gyro debug mode is after the dynamic filter is doing its job. So as you can see, if I run that and take a look at your noise, it's after the dynamic filter and the 2 notch filters. So it's essentially what the noise that the low pass filters would see. You can see that the dynamic notch is, I'm sure it's doing its work. You'll see when you run debug mode as Notch. I'm sure this noise is much higher throughout this entire range. The dynamic notch is knocking it down, and then you can see these 2 static notches are doing their job. So I'm going to leave those in there for now. But we're just not getting enough reduction yet. If I go into the gyro trace and look at the fully filtered gyro trace, you're going to see that there's still quite a bit of noise coming through. In particular, there's this spike right around 100 hertz, and you can see it. That's actually some resonance, essentially sine waves, and you can see it through the background here. If you go measure those, you'll actually see, for example, that those are the 100 hertz signal. So I just turned off the spectrograph and zoomed in, and then just did a mark point from one peak to the next, and you can see, boom, that's that 100 hertz signal. So if I zoom back out again, you can see, like I was talking about, that's what that is there. It looks like it's almost coming from the front motors. So I don't know if you've sat down yet and done the motor test where you go in to Betaflight, take off the props, make sure this is down to 10 milliseconds and your scaling is at 0.05, and then with your props off and it's sitting on the desk, you plug in a LiPo and you run up each motor. You click on you click the it's safe to turn the props off thing. You click on one at a time and you just cycle this up real slowly like this, and you are trying to see where that harmonic is. What you'll see over here is these will jump up, and anything, I have that attacking motor noise, it's almost, I guess I could call it a white paper out there, and anything above 0.08, anything approaching 0.1 or higher, that's a noisy motor. Is there anything bent on the shaft, or is it out of balance? So try to run each motor, see if you can see any one motor in particular is causing an issue, and see if you can isolate that. So give that a whirl. Trying to come back to this noise and just attack it directly, I really feel like you're falling into this recommendation by Boris of a very noisy setup. So what his recommendation is to take the gyro low pass filter back to 50, leave the Dterm low pass at 100. He also says to turn on this, basically this is the soft filter, this is the hardware filter, the gyro hardware filter. I wouldn't do this step yet, so let's talk about that real quick. I would go into your your PID tuning tab here, filters, and then you'd be changing this gyro to 50. I believe you have your, let's go back here, let's go into the Dterm. Yeah, I believe you set your Dterm filter to PT1. Set that back to biquad, which is the default. You're too noisy to take advantage of that just yet. So set that back to biquad. So this would be biquad. Set this to 50. Leave that at 100. You know, we can leave this on. Right now you have it set at like 160 and 161. And I don't know if that was just a mistake, but it's not going to do anything. So if I can show you that here in a second. See how you have this, the center at 161 and then 160? That's essentially, you should just turn it off if that's the case. So honestly, I would set that back to the default or turn it off for now, the notch, the Dterm notch, since you are setting it to biquad. Maybe that's a good, now just be careful. I think with this being at biquad at 100 and then turning this off, you should be fine, but just be cautious when you're test flying this to only fly for 5 or 10 seconds, just a simple hover, put it down and grab the motors, make sure they're not too hot, and then, you know, get up and do some more aggressive flights to get a nice black box log, but just don't smoke a motor. I think you'd be fine because this, you know, set to biquad, the more aggressive filter. Leave your static notches on for now. Set the low pass to 50, and then we're going to leave the gyro as is. So what Boris was talking about there is if you type get gyro, the gyro hardware filter, Gyro LPF, is set to off. It's been off for many versions now. This is a slower, less efficient low-pass filter than the software filter that Betaflight has, but it's essentially the same thing. I don't see a reason to turn that on and set it all the way back at 188, but you know, Boris knows a lot more than me about this stuff. So yeah, and if you don't know, he's the original creator of Betaflight. He's the one that spun it off from CleanFlight. I don't know if he's active as much as he used to be, but you know, it all started with him. So I don't see the advantage of that. If you go look at the latest video, which I know you're on there, and I need to answer a question you had on there, that the 1 minute count, and I'll do that and you'll see what I'm talking about, where I show the different filters and the different transition bands. I don't see, while setting this low, turning on this low pass turn being at the cutoff point all the way at 188, I don't see how that's going to cause an advantage. But you know, like I just said, he knows more than I do about it. So, but I would take that for what it's worth. That's my opinion. This is what I would do if this is my quad. Pull that back, blah blah blah. We need to figure out where this, turn on the notch filter. We need to figure out where, what this looks like afterwards. This big spike of motor noise, which is these things right here. These are the 100 hertz ones. And I'm not even getting to your tuning. Honestly, your PIDs are so low because the P term being low, that's reasonable, just because it's a light craft. But your D term, it's so very hard to tune something or start down that path until you can really, you gotta almost do them in series. Like, we've got to take care of the noise, get that to where it's as much as we can get it to be solved, and then I'll work with you on the tuning part. But you can see even on your P term, you have a heck of a lot of oscillations on that, and the only way to attack that is the gyro. So let's focus there. I mean, all these oscillations on the D term, or the P term, I'm sorry, look at that. That's just way too much. And you're saying you have bounce back on all axes. It's because your D term's not high enough. If your control feels good, that means your P is high enough, I guess. But with all this noise, I'm sure this thing feels weird when you're flying it. At least I would think. Hopefully once you get through this, and it's going to feel so much better. And after you run those logs, we may need to push it back even further. At the end of the day, looking at there's much more aggressive filtering that you can apply in Betaflight than you are yet. We're moving that back to 50. That can go back even farther if we need to. then the other option is we can always change that low pass filter instead of PT1 to biquad, but it's twice the latency for all this data back here. So it's better almost just to push that low pass, that PT1 low pass filters back as much as possible, which helps cancel all this noise out, and then we can start to, I guess once you run this with your dynamic notch filter, we can start to see what noise is not captured by the dynamic notch, and then we can set these static notches and go from. So just a little bit on the debugs. I was saying about doing a debug mode equals notch, but don't be afraid to also do a debug mode of FFT. Now, your primary noise is on your roll axis, which is convenient because that's what this debug mode only looks at, the roll axis 0 only. So the roll axis is the what that's looking at. Channel 0 is prior to the dynamic notch filter, so it'd be nice if you could run this one and this one at the same time, but you can't. So these should match for the roll axis, blah blah blah. But then the channel 0 shows pre, channel post shows after the dynamic notch. So for example on that, if I look at this is the FFT, this is pre-notch or a pre-dynamic notch, and then if I run, so that's debug mode 0, if I run channel 1, that's going to be post, so it's going to show me, boom, that's what the dynamic filter did. So it's kind of handy to see that. And then what's nice about that is you can see the remaining noise prior to the static notches. Now, another way to do this, so to see them all, is just turn off the static notches altogether. So you come into here, come into debug mode, or PID tuning, filters, turn these off, and then run what you're already doing is your debug mode as gyro, which would give you this. So you could see with the, with these off, you'd see after the dynamic notch what peaks you have, and then you can set your statics. And maybe you've done that already, and that's why those static notches are on. I'm not sure. They are attenuating the noise pretty well. They're allowed to overlap, so that's something you could consider doing here as well. So I would set this back to 50, see what we got remaining, and then maybe these need to be wider. So instead of this being at your center on the notch 1 at 400 and then the cutoff at 300, maybe you make the cutoff 200. That will widen this out as well on the top side, and then the same, you just make these twice as wide. Now it's going to add latency to do that, but that's still better than the biquad, especially if you can then start to move that low pass, that PT1 low pass filter up to 60 or 70 hertz. The other, the big thing we got to try to tackle here is this huge spike, because you can see how big that is. It's gigantic. Amplitude of noise there, and that has to do with the amplitudes. That basically, this spike being so high is because these signals are so high, so it's a strong vibration. It's not just a weak, fast vibration. It's a very strong, semi-fast vibration, and that's probably the resonance that you're talking about that you can hear. So give that a whirl. Then after all that's done, we can push down the gyro noise as much as possible. We'll look at the P trace to make sure we've got it down as much as that it has a low noise floor, which it's okay-ish here, but this big spike is not okay. And that's the roll. I think the pitch is better. Yeah, the pitch is somewhat better. Yeah, the pitch is definitely better here. You still got just a bunch of low end noise here too. We would love to be able to handle. And then, but ultimately we'll come back and we'll look at the Dterm on the roll axis, and we need to set. Well, we'll see what you get with that being at biquad and how that kills some of this noise out here with that. And then either we keep the notch, if there's a specific peak that we think we can tackle with the notch, that by using the notch, then we could set that from biquad back to PT1, then we would do that. If we can't think so, then it's one of those handoffs. Like if you're gonna switch it to PT1, if you're going to turn on a notch filter to handle something, well, it should be able to handle it enough that you can change the low pass from biquad to PT1. If not, well then just leave the notch off and just keep biquad on, because you already have enough latency within biquad that you don't want to add a notch on top of biquad. It's usually, you don't want to have notch filters and biquad. You want to be able to turn biquad to PT1 through using notch filters to handle the higher end motor noise. The thing you want to do on this is turn on your RC interpolation for the yaw and throttle. You can see here in your motor commands how it's really stepping, and that's because the RC commands for throttle and yaw are not being smooth. The other axes, which is the pitch and roll, seem pretty good. So it looks like those are being smoothed fairly well. It's just adding pitch, throttle and yaw to that to smoothing our RC interpolation. So to do that, go into beta flight and at the CLI type get RC underscore interp, and then what you need to do is change this command RC interp underscore channel equals, you can see it's roll and pitch. You want to make it roll, pitch, yaw, and throttle. So it would be set space this equals, and then it would be, instead of RP, you would set it equal to RPYT and save and enter. And doing this hard maneuver, this flip, you can see here's your desired roll rate. You're looking to get around a negative or around 1,000 degrees per second. It looks like it's achieving that. It's overshooting it a little bit, depending on what you have that set for. And then your Dterm is preceding your P term, which is good, but it is it's really just not strong enough. This here is your bounce back right there. So we need to bump up your Dterm, but we can't do that until we get this motor noise addressed. The other thing to keep in mind is it's looking like you're maxing out these motors. So a part of this roll, this bounce back, could be your motors can't produce. Your quad's calling for it. So it's before we even try to get your Dterm high enough. I don't think that we can. If essentially your PID loop is calling for more thrust than to slow this thing down, you can see it's doing it here. So it doesn't get this bounce back, but it can't get it. It's not getting the desired power. So to some extent, what you may want to try to do is reduce your pitch, at least your pitch rate. Maybe with the power and the pitch of your props, and or the power in your motors and the way the crash is ultra light, but it can't be achievable. You're just asking for too much. It's like saying, well, I want to have a desired roll rate at 10,000 degrees per second. It's like you're not going to get there. The craft's not powerful enough to do that. So try to bring that down. It's close, so try to bring that down. I would go for like 900 degrees per second. See if we can get it tuned into that so we don't see these flat lines. As soon as you start seeing flat lines in your motor commands, that means that the PID the PID loop frequency is saying, I need more, and the motors are reporting back and say, this is all I got, Scotty. I can't, or Captain, I can't give you anything more than I got. And that flatlining for however long that is resulting in some of that overshoot. So let's see what that length of time is. Do a mark point there, and then come over to here, do another mark point. If I can get it with the recording software, sorry. 0.022 milliseconds. So it's a very, very brief point of time, but in that little brief point of time, that can make a difference. So try to bring down your roll rate, your pitch rate at least a little bit, and see if that helps. Maybe 950 or something. I'm sure you don't want to do that, but give it a shot. I've had to do that on crafts as well. I've wanted it faster, and it's just not achievable with the motors or prop pitch that I have on them. You have a picture of this thing? I don't understand some of it, because at this point right here, essentially you have 0 throttle and basically no input. So even if you have air mode on, it's not doing anything, and it's still vibrating on the roll axis. That's where all this trouble's coming from. So it's twitching back and forth on the roll. Do you have capacitors on this? What is your min throttle percent? Because obviously it's still spinning the motors. I see you have D-Shot 1200 on there. So what is your motor idle throttle value? Default's 4.5. What are you running there? It's just interesting to me. So it could be electrical based, but even electrical based, I mean, Jesus, all the ESCs are doing is running min throttle. That's less than 10%. So I don't know where that vibration's coming from. It's interesting. Yeah, here's another thing of your roll rate's too high. I mean, you're doing a backward pitch, and it's maxing out your motors when it's trying to get up to and then it overshoots and maxes out the back motors to compensate. Then it overshoots that because of the lag here, and it does it again. It usually should be 1, where it pitches, it overshoots, and corrects quickly without maxing out, and then it carries through the rest of the move, and then here it's overshooting again, or it's stopping the craft and then the overshoot, so on and so forth, and the bounce back. Yeah, you can see the bounce back here. Okay, well that should be a decent amount of rambling to get you off to the next trace. And I apologize it took me so long to look at this. I was trying to tackle a couple other things, but I'll be more on it, I promise, and tackle this one trace at a time. Thanks.